Hello DG Lovelies, it's Misha M, your geek mom from Diversely Geek, and this is Diversely Geek Discusses My Geek Universe. So today I thought that we would explore personal connection to iconic catchphrases and iconic lines. From 1933 on up, it's pretty amazing how many iconic lines have remained imprinted on us. Lines that have made their way into our social and cultural consciousness, enough so that actually to this day, 80 years later, we still have lines that everyone is saying yet again. They still have social relevance in terms of what and how they mean in a setting, to a person, in a family, or in a community. But bear in mind, that same line that was said in the 30s or the 40s or the 50s could have a completely different contextual meaning or understanding today. And I actually think that's probably what's happened, except that, to be fair, they wouldn't be iconic if they didn't connect personally to across generation, right? So I was exploring for myself the lines that I have connected to and that have remained in my memory, and I've probably passed on to my kids and the family, and I say all the time. So I had to stop and think about it, and I was like, okay, what are the ones that come to my mind the most? The ones that have meaning to me and that are part of my language. Because catchphrases and iconic lines are linguistic communication, yes, in a written form, but by auditory connection. And then by creating a visual image that then also connects to the speaker and to the one who's listening. So I wanted to explore a few of the ones that I remembered or recalled a little more easily. So what I thought I would do is, when I came up with this brilliant idea, I thought that I would go back and look at what the experts have come up with as the 100 most iconic catchphrases and lines from film, theater, cinematography, etc. And actually some of them translate to literature as well, and then across genres, which is kind of cool. So I looked at the American Film Institute, and they have at AFI.com, AFI's 100 greatest movie quotes of all times, but technically it's catchphrases and lines. And what I thought was pretty interesting, scrolling down, Casablanca has the most famous lines. That's 6. Frankly, I kind of believe that. It's an interesting film. In a sense, it was extremely forward-thinking and ahead of the time, and it was definitely addressing extremely relevant social and cultural issues in wartime. And I can see where people would connect to those lines, because at the time that the film came out, it was still extremely in everyone's consciousness what had happened in the war. So I can completely see that. And as we've come across and passed through many generations, those lovelies who served in the war, who patriots who are veterans today, of course those lines meant something to them, because they were supportive lines, you know. And Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman. So hello, come on now. And so I'm going to also tell you there are a couple of really amazing lines from The Wizard of Oz. No one's surprised at that, right? No one's surprised at that. So I'm going to give you the #1 quote of all time, which is not one of the 8 from Casablanca. It's from Gone with the Wind, and I think that it's a a catchphrase that anyone could say. It's, of course, what Rhett says to Scarlett O'Hara at the end of the film. What am I supposed to do now? And he says, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. Let me tell you, after hours and hours of going along with her mischief and her crazy and her drive to become socially relevant in a socially ambiguous and morally ambiguous environment, that he does everything he can to give her what she wants, and she's just a destructive being. And guess what? And he finally is like, I don't care anymore. So when you hear the line, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn, I know that that's what comes to mind for me. Like, I'm done now. That's enough. I've had enough of this nonsense, and I'm walking away. I'm calling it a day. So that's what that line means. Then, of course, you know, send impact. Go ahead, make my day. Here's looking at you, kid. Of course, that's the one we know from Casablanca. Here's looking at you, kid. Rosebud, a single line from Citizen Kane, which once you've read the book and seen the movie, you understand that it connects to the imprint and influence that something you love passionately, that fills you with joy, can have on your life, that you connect to as a sense of hope. And you have to see, I hope there's no spoilers in that. So that's that one. But then in The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy's line that she needed to say to be able to go back home, there's no place like home. I mean, that's self-explanatory. You know, the wizard says, hey, it was in you all the time. You just have to click your heels and recite to yourself, there's no place like home, there's no place like home. Because initially, she's trying to run away from a circumstance and situation where she feels like she's trapped. And then this happens and blah, blah, blah. And in the end, the wizard says, you know, if you want to go back home, it's in you. You just have to recognize that home is enough. So that's what that line represents, at least to me anyway. So, let's go with the cue. Oh, Jerry Maguire, Show Me the Money. While I don't love the film, by the way, you can understand why the way that the line is said and the relevance to him being the agent for this ball player whose life is going to change. And Show Me the Money is about, you know, show me what you got for me. Show me what you can do to change my life. Show me what you can do to make me financially sound and give me the foundation I need in my life. And that's the way I look at that line. So, and then the Terminator, I'll be back. Well, you know, everybody knows what that means. So, the Poltergeist. Looking at the TV, she turns her head and she says, they're here. Oh, I didn't say it as good as her, but that's what she says. And chills go your butt. I mean, chills go through your body. Oh my God. Yeah. It was like the scariest movie. I loved it, but the scariest movie for me. And then you have James Bond with Shaken Not Stirred about his martini. And I think one of the lines that's really one of my favorites from the list, okay, so, the Naughty 90s. I love this line, who's on first? Because Abbott and Costello does this entire shtick based on that. And to this day, I use that line, who's on first, when I am trying to collect my thoughts, figure out what my first step is, not my 8th step, and put myself back in a place where I've got some kind of structure. Because with who's on first, the catcher and the bat is kind of figure out with the coach and with the pitcher what their game plan is going to be, and it's all based on who's on first. And then the rest of it is just freaking hilarious. Oh my God. One of my favorite things of all time. And who's on first? One, makes me smile. Okay? Makes me smile. And two, it helps me to recenter. I know, right? That's crazy. And then you go to Forrest Gump. And my mama always said, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And I'm telling you what, it is literally an exact example of how we should look at life. We have no idea what's coming. Life is unpredictable. Every second's unpredictable. Every moment's unpredictable. I can think that I know what I'm going to say to you, but yet my brain's going to press the button and it's going to come out a different way. And we need to understand that we need to enjoy that deliciousness of the chocolate, and understand that sometimes what's inside that chocolate, that maybe yuck and awful, but there is an end to it, and we can take that chocolate and put it away, and we can move on to another one. So yeah, life is like a box of chocolates. So, also in Moonstruck, where she slaps him across the face and says, "Snap out of it," because he says, "I love you." I love that line by Cher with Nicolas Cage, because I really think that she's trying to tell him in that moment, listen, man, like, your focus is in totally the wrong place at this moment, so let's get it together. Although it has a lot to do with making a decision as to whether or not love is relative in that moment. So, woo! And then Dirty Dancing, nobody puts baby in a corner. I heard it just today, just so you know. And it's something that we hear all the time, and we will always recognize this line where Patrick Swayze is going, hey, well, not, Patrick Swayze as his character is saying, look, you cannot tell her that she's not valued, that she's not loved, that she's not accepted, that she's not good enough. You do not put her in a corner based on your role assumptions and what you believe she needs to be. She is more than good enough. And that's what that line means. So, there you go. But I was going to go into the lines that I think have made a really huge impression on me. And most of them are from my favorite fandoms. My fandoms, see them all around me. I see dead people. And by the way, I'm not making fun of that line. The Sixth Sense, it was an extremely socially relevant and conscious awakening film, to where we need to understand that it's okay to be connected to our past, people who have passed on, to our loved ones who are not with us, because they leave an impression on us. Hey, they lived in our lives. They meant so much to us, and it's okay for us to feel that they're with us. And as a kid watching that film, well, I wasn't a kid, I was a little older, but I really felt extremely accepted and very much in tune with the entire story. He's the one who's actually going through this experience himself. And then you come to the end and you're like, oh my God, shock. Anyway, see how much, one line helps you to recollect and imbibes all of this emotion, feeling, thought, all these things. Anyway, so you know that I'm like excited about what I'm talking about, because I'm actually like jittery. So, so here we go. One of my absolute favorite lines from Lord of the Rings. So you're going to think it's my precious, which really, truly, what it means to me is a sense of maniacal chaos and holding on in an overwhelmed, passionately attached, and bind, like bound, imprisoned by that passion. And that's what the precious does, right? It binds the ring bearer to the madness of power that's within the ring. And so that's why they have to throw my precious into the fires of Mordor. And look at how hard that is. Look at how it scars them. It scars their souls, for God's sake. So, it represents that bonds and attachment and those fires. So that's what I think of when I hear precious. But one of my absolute favorite lines, well, there's two. One I'm wearing. It's right on me. And if you look really closely, you're going to see a door to the Bagginses. And the line is, "In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit." I get emotionally attached to the line because, for me, Tolkien never told me what he wanted me to understand about that line, right? I couldn't ask him, what do you mean to give such relevance to this line and why that line has meant so much. But for me, what it meant is, even in a hole in the ground, you can find yourself. You can find your relevance. You can find your power. You can find your strength. But most of all, you can find your contentment, because there was contentment. Though there was a yearning to journey and to search and to adventure, there was contentment. And in the Shire, the hobbits had that sense and that state of contentment. Not always in the best of ways, because they literally blocked out all the negatives. And is that a bad thing? I'm not sure, as long as they live a happy, a safe, and equanimous, and an equal lifestyle. So I'm cool with that. And so that line, brings all of that to my mind. But my line, of course, like for many people, is "You shall not pass," boom, by Gandalf to the Balrog, imbibes, and I wrote this, imbibes a sense of protection for those facing evils and a darkness that may be invading our minds, blocking our path, or trying to overwhelm us. Gandalf stands as a guardian, our hope, as it were, that we can connect to the magic within and continue on our journeys protected. Because he sacrifices, because he always knew that sacrifice had to happen, that there was going to be an absolute state of transformation from that, whether it was death or something else. There was no way to know, but he knew at some point that line, that facing the Balrog meant that the next state of being was to happen. And to know that sense of protection and sacrifice is indelible to the line means so much to me. So I will often say that line, just so you know. Another line that I absolutely love, which is actually newer to the Star Wars universe, is "I am one with the Force and the Force is with me." Chirrut says that in Rogue One, and he says it, doesn't just say it, he chants it. It's a mantra. It's a mantra because when you're reciting prayerfully, hopefully, and faithfully, that positive mantra can create positive energy in you. And "I am one with the Force and the Force is with me" means that I am connected to the Force and the Force is connected to me. But not just connected, it means that we exist in unity, in synchronization, as one. And with movement, the Force moves with me. When I exist and act, I act through the Force. And it's a really important line for me because it was in Force Awakens that Rey, I believe, shows or exemplifies or represents that connection to the Force, that being in unison with the Force. And it's a discussion that happens later on in Jedi, whether you agree with it or not. So that line for me, I actually say it often to myself. I have it on my table right behind me. I have it in my bedroom. I am one with the Force and the Force is with me. Because for me, it connects me to love. It connects me to my loved ones. It connects me to my brother who passed, because we used to say this line all the time. And it just connects to the universe. So that's why I love it so much. And for me, it actually becomes the next step from May the Force be with you, where a being is wishing and imbibing that protection and cradling that protection of the Force in a relationship, for instance, and wishing it onto someone else, and at the same time understanding that that Force will protect and guide and will be a supportive structure, and will basically protect. Then I am one with the Force and the Force is with me is then saying, not is the Force, may the Force be with you, it's now the Force and I are one. So that's a huge step, I think, spiritually, and in terms of self-empowerment and self-acceptance and self-love and self-value. That's how important and iconic that is for me personally. And I have always said a line my brother and I used to say between us, and I think most of our family remember this about him. Do or do not, there is no try. You know, Yoda tells this to Luke. I'm trying. No, it's either you do it or you don't do it. Don't keep trying. That means that you have to believe. You have to commit. You have to commit your being to that action and inspire and motivate the action to have the outcome that it needs to have. If you try, then you're actually attaching, I think maybe you're attaching your hopelessness to it versus your hope. So I think in life, we do what we do. We do it the best that we can, but we do it fully immersively, motivated, inspired, and committed. And then the consequences, or then the outcome is what it is. But I think most of the times when we've committed in that way, then, something positive will happen. At least that's what I hope. At least that's what I believe. Then I'm going to go back iconically back to Star Trek, because Star Trek is absolutely one of my favorite, and most consciously prevalent sci-fi fandoms in my life. Believe it or not, actually, in a way more than Star Wars, but yet Star Wars, there's also a plethora for us to just enjoy and embrace. But, the Vulcans say live long and prosper. And a Vulcan farewell, technically, is meant to inspire goodwill, contentment, self-value, personal strength, and belief in the self, that you will live long and that you will prosper. And so it's not hey, live long and prosper, or live long and prosper. It's live long and prosper. So it is wishing it upon another and literally, in a sense, passing the vibes to wish it into being, if that makes any sense. But that's how I feel about it. I think I could probably have said that a little bit better, but that's kind of how I feel. Which is, you know, I love Spock and I love Leonard Nimoy. I love Leonard Nimoy because he went through so much and made so many mistakes, but believed so much in the character of Spock. And in that line, the progressiveness of Star Trek. So I think that obviously most of us did, which is why that line has lived in us till today. And so I'm going to go on to one last one. And surprisingly enough, this one is from Harry Potter. And there's a little line, well, there are two lines, two of my favorites. And believe it or not, one of it is literally a phrase. It says mischief managed. And I think that, you know, that's the spell that the Weasleys use to open and close the Marauder's map. The Marauder's map shows everyone where everyone is in that given space, right? Where everyone is at Hogwarts. And I feel like I wanted to understand what that meant and why would J.K. Rowling use mischief managed as a way to open and close the Marauder's map. And I thought about it, and for me, I felt like it represents a possibility, a journey, a joyful glee. And the Weasley twins, being the holders of the map at that time, that's who they were, right? They didn't bow down to indoctrination. They didn't, I mean, they were respectful, hopeful, pragmatic, realistic, but at the same time, they had such a fantastic imagination, and I feel like mischief managed represents all of that. So I think that actually for most of the Potter fandom, that maybe they may feel somewhat the same. I hope so. If you think, or if you feel that any of the lines that I have said represents differently for you, or you have a better take on it, totally feel free to reach out to us. And by the way, if you have any iconic lines and catchphrases that you connect to, that have guided you or strengthened you through some really tough times, or helped you to laugh and giggle and guffaw when you really needed that most, or that you have on your wall that like help you to see the world in a better light every day, then please, you can message us at Diversely Geek on Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, or you can definitely leave a comment below. Actually, we would love you to leave a comment, because when we get the feedback from our DG Lovelies out there, I would love to compile our own 100 fave lines, iconic lines. So I've given a few. I invite all of you to join us in getting to that 100 number of iconic catchphrases and lines. Now, back in the day, Diversely Geek was named after one of my all-time favorite lines, also from Harry Potter. And it was when Luna Lovegood said to Harry, when they were in the horseless chariot being pulled by the Thestrals, when she said, "You're not crazy, Harry. You're just as sane as I am. I see them too." And people don't understand in that moment that she had seen death. And because Harry had seen death, they were able to see the Thestrals pulling the chariot. And that's when you truly understand, you know, Luna's extremely content in who she is. She's extremely self-aware. She values herself. She's not attached to what other people expect of her, how other people see her, what role anyone is asking her to have in this life. Harry's still there because Harry has lived a very abused life, and he still hasn't found a sense of self-worth that would allow him to just accept the mystical, the magical, and the fantastic. Although, at this point in the series, he certainly has almost gotten there. So it was really interesting because Lorena is an extremely strong character who is very important and influential in Harry's life, although many people may not realize that. So it's kind of funny too, because she always says, I suspect the Nargles have them, or, you know, took them. I love that line, and it's silly but fun, because again, it's this absolute belief in the fantastical and the mystic and the magical. So, with that being said, there are certainly probably a dozen more lines or catchphrases that I'd be more than happy to throw out there. Aren't you surprised that I have not had a Doctor Who phrase come out of my mouth? It's kind of crazy, isn't it? Because I have 4 of them on my wall at my office at work. And I think I'll leave that one for another day when we do our show on time and space and relativity, because I really want to do justice to the 50 plus years of content and language and emotional movement that is the Doctor Who phenomenon. So, I thank you very much, and I encourage you again to reach out to us on Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr, and comment below to help us to create our own list of the top 100 iconic lines and catchphrases. And as always, be well, live long and prosper.